Welcome to Nightline. I'm Pastor Benny. Thanks so much for being with us. And hey, this is going to be a great program tonight because we're going to be talking about the Greenville Textile Heritage Society. And let me just say a word to so many of you who grew up on what we would call, quote, the Mill Hill. We want you to call in tonight. You're going to hear me say this from time to time, and our guest may also say it from time to time. But if there's someone that impacted your life, that lived on one of the mill hills, one of the mill areas, we want you to call in and tell us who that was. Would you do that? Our prayer partners who are here standing by, they'll know to pass that on to us. We're going to put it in a book of remembrances. We're going to be talking much more about that. We're going to be talking about the greatest generation, right around here in our local area. So don't go anywhere, please. Scripture tonight, we're going all the way to the book of Psalms, Psalms 119, verse 111. Are you ready? It says this: Thy testimonies have I taken as an heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart. How very fitting that is. Listen, a couple other things we want to remind you of. If you would like to be a prayer partner, I'm talking to you tonight, all right? If you or maybe your Sunday school class, small group Bible study group, maybe some of the elders or deacons, if you would like to be or like to learn more about how I can be a prayer partner, would you give us a call? That number is easy to remember, 864-244-1616, and ask for Amanda. Now, if Amanda isn't here, one of her lieutenants will be, and we'll help you, and we'll teach you how you can become a prayer partner. Tonight, in just a few moments after the chorale sings, we've got some great guests. Don Harkins, he and I have become friends over the years. I've been talking about discipleship, but tonight, he's going to be telling us more about the Greenville Textile Heritage Society, and with him are two of his board members. He's talking about being surrounded by the Baptists. Watch out, brother, you might leave here as a Baptist, so be careful. He's from pretty much Church of God, but with us down is Dr.Marshall, Williams, Dr. Bill Cashion. We'll be talking to these gentlemen tonight. You're going to enjoy what they have to share, I'll promise you. But right now, I'm going to promise you something even better than that. That is the Greenville Textile Heritage Society Chorale. They're going to be singing Carolina in the morning and a festival call to freedom. Okay, folks, come on, lead us now. That's the Heritage Society Chorale, and we want to thank Judy Edwards. She's been directing that, and she'll be doing that all night. And, of course, Ann Linder's there on the piano. Thank you, folks. They'll be back in just a little bit. They're going to be singing all during the evening. And not only that, on this Saturday, you can hear them as well as the Heritage Band, but we'll be talking more about that. Tonight, I'm telling you, I don't know what I've done to deserve being with such great scholars. Help me understand what I've done, Don. I want you to introduce yourselves, telling everybody who you are and your position there. Don, we'll start with you, though we know you. We know all three of you, but let the folks know who may not know for the first time.
I'm Don Harkins. I'm chairman of the Greenville Textile Heritage Society, which is 13 years old. We started in 13 years ago, and we're getting ready to celebrate our 13th annual festival, Textile Heritage Festival, this Saturday.
All right.
Brother Benny, I'm Marshall Williams. I pastor Emmanuel Baptist Church in the Mills Mill community. I grew up in the Dunedin community and went to Parker High School in Furman, but came back 1984 to pastor Emmanuel Baptist Church. And then when the Textile Heritage Group got together, I began to represent Dunedin and Mills Mill groups.
Okay. Bill.
I'm Bill Cashion. I grew up on Slater Mill Village. Wow. And now back here in the area after many years in missions, many years in Venezuela.
That's
which
right.
You're well acquainted with.
Yes.
And now serve as interim pastor at Forestville Baptist Church over near Travelers Rest, and also teach at the North Greenville Graduate School, Missions and Evangelism, the greatest school in the world, by the way.
Yes,
Send
it
all the
is.
students you can over there.
And if they don't go there, come to Anderson University, okay? We'd love to have you there at Anderson as well. And I'm a trustee there, so I'm on always. But it's great. I am a North Greenville graduate.
Right.
And so I'm a very proud graduate of North Greenville. So anyways, we're not going to talk about schools tonight. We are going to talk about the Heritage Society. And listen, again, I said it earlier at the outset. I want you, if you're listening, if there was somebody that impacted your life, they lived on the Mill Hill, all right, in one of the areas here locally, and they impacted you. You remember them. Would you call us those prayer partners, 864-244-1616. Now, they're there to take your prayer requests, of course. But if you're listening tonight and you'd like to call in and say, I remember so-and-so, he or she, would you do that? We want to put that in a book of remembrance. Isn't that what I understand, Don?
Exactly. And our theme for our festival this year is remembering the greatest generation, Greenville's greatest generation.
Wow.
And those are the folks that came before us, that paved the way for us, our parents and our grandparents that worked so hard in the mills and gave us the opportunities we have today, and we're so thankful for each one of them.
Was this idea birthed through you, or was it by a conglomerate of people?
It was. I was over at Young Harris College for an oral history roundtable. My cousins were talking about growing up in the mountains there in North Georgia in Union County, and on the way, each one of them told about their life, how hard it was walking to church and to school, and they talked about moonshining and all the different things going on in the mountains. And but on the way back, I thought of the idea of, I grew up at Monaghan, and I thought about the idea of bringing the people at Monaghan together and just sharing in recording some of our experiences. And that's what we're all about, is preserving and celebrating our textile heritage.
Right.
So I came back, and we first met on November the 1st, 2006.
Okay.
We had 9, I contacted some people from other mill villages.
Right.
We had 9 people there, and we've since grown to about 200 members, and we've got 13 mill villages groups that are part of our organization. Right. And but that's how it got started, and we've expanded, and we've had a great time sharing our heritage. I've got a tremendous heritage. I could talk all night about my heritage.
And you do. Now, how many mill villages would you say are in the Greenville, or we want to say Spartanburg, Greenville area?
Well, we've got 13 in our group, and it's most of the textile crescent.
Right.
And it stretches from Piedmont to Slater, and the mills. And there were many more mills than 13.
Right.
I don't know if Marshall may know the number, but this is the groups that came and joined our group, and we have several large festivals every year, Christmas concert, a God and Country program.
Right.
So we're having a great time and celebrating our heritage.
All right. Now, with your background, all right, Marshall, tell us your background there, because you came up in what village?
I grew up in Dunedin Village, and then I left to go off to seminary and came back. But came back in '84 to Mills Mill, which was adjacent to the Dunedin community. And there was, at that time, Don and those guys, and like you said, began to just accumulate pictures, because the pictures, the stories were getting away from us. Our people were dying, passing away. And I got involved with Jerry Compton. Jerry was one of the original members, and Mike Powell. Both were at the Dunedin. And we were going to put a book together, which we have now. It's about a 600-page book on Dunedin. So we just began to collect the pictures and the stories, and then just other things opened up to us at the library as well, downtown library, and then the Upcountry History Museum opened up, and we had several of our programs there, which it opened up the opportunity for us just to tell people we grew up in the greatest generation in Greenville, which made it the textile center of the world.
Right, it did. And so, now, Bill, you also, and I learned this tonight, grew up on one of the mill villages. I didn't realize
I did. I grew up Slater Mill Village, and I guess I've been with the Textile Heritage Society 7 or 8 years now. And the way I came to know about it, I got a call one day and said, we want to induct your father in the inaugural class of the Textile Sports Hall of Fame. I didn't even know they existed. And I said, well, that sounds good to me. And so I went down to Piedmont for that. And the next year, my grandfather was placed in the Textile Hall of Fame. And I said, I'd like to be a part of that group.
Yeah.
And I've just been thrilled to see what the men like Marshall and Don and others have done in preserving the history of so many mills. And so glad that we at Slater could be a part of that and contribute as well.
Yeah, and so if I were to ask y'all to be thinking about memories, I mean, is there, even beginning over here with you, Don, is we're asking our people to call in with people who impacted their lives, okay? Someone maybe from the mill village. If I ask Don Harkins, do you remember someone that impacted your life?
I would say the coaches at Monaghan.
Okay.
Ken Pittman, great Christian man, and we've also inducted him into Textile Hall of Fame. But he was my first coach at Monaghan, and he showed so much concern for me individually, and encouraged me.
And how old would you have been then?
I was about 7 or 8 years old.
My goodness, here he is,
and,
50 years later, they're about talking about someone who. But I mean, these folks stay with you. Marshall, what about you? If I said, I'm going to ask Bill the same thing, because we're asking the people to call in, who would you say?
Dunedin is obviously Ward Williams. He was called the man. He was an All-American in basketball at Indiana. Then he came to Donaldson Air Force Base as a pilot. And then from that, Doodle Thomas, who would be the other person that was involved in athletics at Dunedin, got him to come there, and he just took over the program. And we were all raised under his tutelage and sports. And most of our heroes were sports heroes in those days, for sure.
Sure.
But then, of course, a lot of us were associated with Parker High School. And then you had the principals and Coach Kendall and Miss Rogers and the Chorale and the different band directors, Jimmy Sin. So those folks they were ahead of us, obviously, but they just laid the foundation for us to get involved in these things.
Right. What about it, Bill?
Well, I could mention some sports heroes too, and I've mentioned 2 of them in my family, and there were others, but one that stands out to me is not a sports hero. His name was Roy Whitmire. He ran the community store there on the Mill Village, and he was our Royal Ambassador leader at Slater Baptist Church. And we had a RA baseball, and so I learned the Bible and baseball going through that, and Roy really instilled in my life a love for God. One day I went into the store and I didn't have any money, but I wanted some candy, so I stole a bar of candy. And I went out and hid in the bushes and I ate it. And sometime later I got under conviction about that. Went back, and it's been probably 2 or 3 weeks. I went back and I said, Roy, I'm sorry, I stole candy. And he said to me, I saw you when you did it, but I knew I taught you well, and you'd be back here one day.
Isn't that something?
And I've never forgot that.
And here you're talking about that. How old were you about?
At that time, probably 8 or 9 years old.
And here we are, seriously, 50 years or more, talking about that experience. You've talked about these 3 people or more that have influenced your lives. which is phenomenal. And I would probably hasten to say that I'm sure there are many people out there who would say these three gentlemen have impacted your life as well. And please, you're listening tonight, you grew up in one of our mill villages, you grew up on the Mill Hill, call us if you would, please. We want to put that in our Book of Remembrance. And tell us again what that Book of Remembrance is, Don.
We'll have a listing of each mill village and entries underneath that. And,
right.
We're going to keep it we're going to be building a textile museum in our park. We'll talk more about that later.
Wow.
But we'll have it in our museum. Among other memories and artifacts and memorabilia and pictures. And we're excited about our park and museum.
You know, I did not growing up on the Mill Hill or Mill Village, though I came up from Spartanburg. You know, I did know much about textiles because this area, we all know, is a big textile area. Of course, for us, Mr. Milliken over there in Spartanburg, but there were a lot of great mills, the Beaumont Mills, Drayton Mills, and on I guess I could go. But I did not grow up in what would be the mill section of town. And yet it continues to play a very important part. I learned this when I got into church work, and I was still a teenager. I was at North Greenville and I'd go into places and churches and say, oh, I'm so-and-so, I grew up in, you know, Monaghan Village or this mill village. And people would always say that to me, and I was kind of amazed because I thought, well, good, that's good. I mean, I didn't know, but for the folks that came up, it was very, very significant. So much so that here we are talking about it here tonight. And so, from you, Dr. Williams, what is it like having come back now to Greenville? You've been here, you were away, you came back. What's it like coming back home, so to speak?
Well, it really was coming back home because my parents were really retiring from Dunedin at the time. They had my dad had 54 years, my mom had 51 years there at the plant. Wow. They came from Fort Shoals and Pelzer to come to work in the mill in Greenville, and my other family members were there. But just as Don touched on a while ago, the churches were really the focal point for most of us, for me and us that are here tonight. That was really part of our village. It had so much impact on us. So from my standpoint, coming back to pastor a church in a mill village, Mills Mill, and then to see, as a matter of fact, our oldest member passed away this morning, 95 years old, Miss Liv Goodwin. She's the oldest. We only have 3 or 4 members that are in that age group now. But so that was really the encouragement that I got, was coming back to be, and I know that may sound trite to say, I was amongst my people, people that I grew up with, people that I knew, people I went to school with, people that understood my background, I understood their background. It was really a great time to pastor a church in those 80s and 90s in the churches. So that was a real focal point for me.
And you're still actively pastoring?
Still, I've been there. November will be 35 years.
My gracious. I'm amazed that when you were just talking about your parents being in the mill 50 and 51 years? 54
and 51 years, right.
And I mean, and I find this, maybe I'm wrong, correct me, gentlemen, but it seems like that every time you meet folks who say they grew up on the Mill Hill, they had a family member who worked there 20, 30, 40 years or more, just like we're hearing from you. Bill, what would keep someone in a mill for 40 plus years?
Well, in the mill village, and I think all mill villages pretty much had the same characteristic, is you had a partnership between the mill, the churches, and the school. And it was just a wonderful way of life. I know I can think of, as a kid in Slater Mill Village, the street stayed full of children all the time. You could go in anybody's house at any time. You knew all of your neighbors. There was no crime. Well, there were times that I remember coming in one time, and a neighbor from a couple of houses down the street was, nobody's at home at my house, but he just went in and made a sandwich, and he was sitting there eating a sandwich. It didn't bother us at all, because we did the same thing at their house.
And you didn't lock the doors?
No, and there was just a unity of spirit and heart, and a lot of that, as Marshall mentioned, had to do with the churches. On Slater, for example, there was Church of God, Methodist Church, and the Baptist Church. One have a revival meeting, the other call off services and go. All three. We were together all the time, and there were, we call it biddy basketball and midget basketball for the kids. I had community buildings where we We even had a swimming pool at the community building, and so it was just a great life and
so
kept people together.
We've been talking tonight about the Mill Village and growing up there, being part of it. And again, if you've been listening and there's someone that you would like just to call in to our prayer partners and say, tonight I want to go on record. I want you to know so-and-so has impacted my life. All right, would you do that? Go to your phone right now. By the way, the Greenville Textile Heritage Society Chorale. Woo, that's a mouthful. Do you know that? Monica, I'm going to have Monica say it next time. God in Country Celebration. Come on, folks, lead us now. We want to thank again Judy Edwards. She's directing, and Ann Linder on the piano. Thank you, ladies. We appreciate your good work. Keep it up. You know, we've been talking with these fine gentlemen over here about Textile Heritage Society. I am getting educated tonight. I really am, and I hope you are. We've already had someone call us in tonight, someone from the ore mill, worked in the ore mill, and we're going to keep this, and Don's going to get this, and we're going to make sure we get this in the book of Remembrance, all right? There are many others, and I say that to you because if you're familiar with Nightline, you know that yellow is a miscellaneous form. These are our prayer reports. If it's blue, someone has given their heart to the Lord, and it's never too late to give your heart to the Lord Jesus Christ. If you don't know him as personal Lord and Savior, we have people ready to pray with you, offer that sinner's prayer, and you can be redeemed and begin a new life in Jesus Christ. We'll pray with you tonight as well. But also, this is telling us about your calling in, so we want you to please call in. We're going back over here to Don Harkins. And Don, with this in mind, and obviously this thing, is it snowballing in the fact that the Textile Heritage Group that's growing and growing and growing? You said you have now 200 members, I think?
Yeah, over 200. We started out with 3 mill villages at the first meeting, and from there we've grown to 13, and it just continues to grow. A year or so after we organized, we had Dr. Moore from Bob Jones University to come to us, and he had been collecting information on textile bands.
My.
So he had an interest in forming a textile band, and they formed about a year after we started, and they're still playing today. They'll be playing at our festival coming up as a brass band, just like the old mill village bands that played 100 years ago.
And there'll be many people out there who know exactly what you're talking about and remember exactly what you said.
And the band was, like some of them said earlier, was the entertainment for the village. They would play at the ball games, and they would have parades, and this was a form of entertainment. Sunday afternoon concerts in the park, and so, and then about 2 years later, Judy Edwards formed the Chorale, and we had a big, I think the first concert was at the Parker High School when they reopened the auditorium. The Legacy group bought that, and we had a big God and Country in July, and it was about 110 degrees in there. But
tell the folks what they can expect on this Saturday.
Okay, at our festival every year we have all of our mill villages come together, and we plan this months ahead of time. And this year we have our band will be playing, and a chorale, and we have a heart sound. That's a quartet. It'll be singing in the afternoon. We have food and tons of exhibits. And the beauty about this year, we'll be in our park, the Textile Heritage Park.
And that is located where?
It's across from the Monaghan Mill in the old Monaghan parking lot.
Okay.
And before the cars came along, it became a parking lot. It was called Central Park, Monaghan Central Park. So we returned it back to its original use as a park. And
now that begins at 10
10
o'clock.
o'clock, 10 to 2.
This Saturday.
Saturday the
until 2
24th.
o'clock. And you've got a lot of band concert, opening ceremonies. Doug Dent's going to be there. The chorale that's been singing, they'll be there. And are you speaking, or you're down at 12:15?
Well, we're having a dedication of our Mill Walk section of the park, which we're excited about. And throughout this trail, probably 3/4 of a mile, we'll have alcoves representing each mill village, and there'll be a historical marker. And we have, there may be a picture of it somewhere. I don't know if Marshall's got it or not.
We may show, there
it is.
But that's it, and we'll be dedicating that mill walk section.
Okay.
There'll be markers for 13 of the mills that's represented in our group, plus a marker for the Parker High School.
That is great. I mean, so you're encouraged, particularly if you have someone in the family or someone that maybe no longer with you. Maybe you have never, ever even lived in a mill village, worked in the mill, but maybe your parents or grandparents, great-grandparents, aunt and uncles did. This might be of great interest to you. Go to the phone now. Give us a call. Somebody that on the Mill Hill, that Mill Village impressed you. With all that going on, we've got some pictures over there that's called The Greatest Generation. And I'm anxious to know, now, is this something, a play on something Mr. Brokaw did in writing The Greatest Generation from World War II? Or is this in this kind of piggyback?
Well, we think it's the greatest generation in Greenville.
Amen.
And they're the ones that worked so hard, and a lot of the infrastructure was set up by the mill owners back in the early days, the Parkers and the Woodsides and the Captain Smythes and Arringtons and the Poes and different ones. They were responsible for a lot of the infrastructure of Greenville. So they paved the way for the growth and the development of Greenville.
Fred, could you pan a couple of those pictures very slowly? Mr. Director, if we could pan that, maybe there's someone watching tonight that's going to see somebody over there. I don't know that they went to the moon. Maybe they did.
Yeah, we did. I can tell you about that.
Tell us about that. Tell us about
Well, I was working summer jobs when I was in college. My dad knew what was going on and some other mill officials, but they had to keep it a secret. Mr. J.P. Stevens, or Mr. Stevens, had a friend with NASA, and this was right after the 3 astronauts were killed in the fire.
Right.
And he said, I got a problem. We got to find a better material, fire resistant. And Mr. Stevens said, I think I can help you. So at Slater, unbeknownst to us, they were doing what's called a finely woven silica quartz-based material resistant to 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that material is what you see. We have the prototype from Nassau. This is Neil Armstrong's suit. The material from Slater was for Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, all of the astronauts in all of the subsequent launches after that, and even the material was used in the payload bay of the space shuttle because it also resists corrosion. So they covered the metal, and for years we never knew that, but about 5 years ago they had a festival at Slater, and 2 of the astronauts came.
Isn't that fascinating?
And they presented the mill, the prototype. So the prototype, this will be at the park Saturday too.
My goodness. So you want to be there. Also, Fred, can you pan a couple of those black and white shots that we've got there? Because there might just be, as we're panning those pictures there, could we do that? There might be some folks sitting at home. Do you recognize?
They're from Mill. That's the Mills Mill pictures.
The Mills Mill
first, second, and third shift from Mills Mill, which is there on Church Street, Mills Avenue.
Would any of those folks still be alive today?
There's a couple of folks that are in those pictures, but that's still alive.
But there's some folks who are watching tonight. You see Mom and Daddy, or you
Their
see
mamas
Grandmama
and
and
daddy.
Granddaddy on. Don't you see them? There they are. Now come on.
Right.
I mean, wow. I mean, when you think about that, and now those pictures would go back how far?
1954. There several studios went around to the different mills, and they went to each shift and took pictures. All of them are group pictures like this,
Right.
and you had a first shift, second shift, third shift, weave room, spinning room, card room, silk room, or, for example, at Fort Shoals Mill, where my parents were, the whole mill, they just had all 3 shifts could be in one picture. So they went around and made it. Now, thank the good Lord for that, because now we've got pictures of these people and how they dressed and their lives, and we're continually getting people that'll go in. These particular pictures here are in Skin's Hot Dogs over there on Church Street, and even last week I had a lady come in and she found her grandfather in one of those pictures.
Isn't that something?
So it brings a lot of remembrance back to them, but it also encourages us, because these pictures are beginning to show up more and more now, because families, grandma dying, they don't know what to do, and they call us and they say, we've got meal pictures, do you all want them? Of course, we get them, we scan them and put them in our booklets that we've got here.
And what is this that we have here?
Well, these, in connection with our park program and the mill walk, each village has a section, and as you walk through the mill walk, there's a 38 by 38 piece of granite that's got the history of that particular mill that's there. And with that, it will be made available not only as a duplicate of that granite marker, but then the history of that particular mill that's there.
Goodness.
And this one is Judson, of course, and we've got, all of the mills that we talked about. And then, of course, we've got one on Parker High School. So many of us are connected with Parker. There's the Judson Mill that he just now showed us.
Right, right.
And we try to connect with every one of these mills. There's the Mills Mill
Mills
right
Mill,
that's there.
Yeah.
So you can go through. But all of these that are in the
Slater.
what we call the Textile Crescent plus Slater.
Right, right.
That's there.
Right. And you know, it's amazing to me when you look at that now. I mean, today, folks don't see the grandeur and how an expansive area that these mills encompassed back then.
Right.
All today is that you maybe see a brick building. For example, coming down from Appalachian Baptist Church, you know, you can come by and there's the Appalachian Mill up there, really on a hill as you come down from the church. You have the little waterfall over there, and there it is. And I can only imagine what that encompassed in its heyday, so to speak, with parking or areas. There are a lot of folks who not only worked in the mill, but they lived in mill housing.
We did.
As I was told, and that many of these mills would build houses, and they would have like duplexes, you know, two
families in one house.
You know, did any of y'all grow up in?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I did.
Yeah,
I lived in
all of us.
All of us did.
I lived in the same house from when I was born till I went off to college.
Yeah.
Sure enough.
On Speed Street in Monaghan.
And most of the villages would have a boarding house that was actually a teacherage where they brought in the teachers to live, to teach in the schools.
And did each mill village have its own school?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Their own grammar school, and then they developed the junior high system. But then they went, for us, most of us in the Greenville area, we went to Parker High School.
Right, right.
And of course, Slater had their Slater Marietta, and then Travelers Rest High School. But all of us grew up in these houses. Matter of fact, my son, who recently passed away, was still living in my mom and dad's house. And I'll probably be moving in there in the next couple of years, be moving back into my house I grew up in.
My goodness. Now, you'll restore it, I would imagine.
Well, it's pretty much they built them to last.
Well, yes.
And so it's amazing, the village homes that are now in Mills Mill where we are in Dunedin. Right. They're in great demand right now because they were built so strong.
Well, even today, you go by, as I said, Appalachia. You can say Beaumont Mills in Spartanburg or any other place like that. We're talking about Dunedin. These houses have been standing for what, 50, 60, 70 years or more?
100 years.
100 plus.
So, and listen, they don't build houses like that anymore.
No. Dunedin was the last mill village built, basically speaking. We had 585 houses, and it was 1911 and 12. That was the last village, basically, for Greenville that was built.
My goodness.
They're showing there now.
Look at that. Would you?
Slater was the baby. We came along in 1927.
Right.
Oh, my goodness. The Mammoth $1 million.
It was the first $1 million mill to be built in Greenville, the first total electric mill in the South, and became the largest operating mill in the world. When Greenville was the textile center of the world, Dunedin had the largest number of employees working in one plant, 3 shifts. Now, the Woodside Mill was the largest complete cotton mill under one roof. In other words, the whole process took place under one roof. Dunedin and other mills were more dispersed out in the building. Now, there's a picture of Woodside. That was the largest mill, cotton mill in the world at one time. But to show you, Brother Benny, how the things have changed, Dunedin was the largest mill, and when it closed, it was running about 1 million spindles. That's how you gauge the mill size. Today in China, when you go there are mills that are running 10 million spindles in one mill. And they've got several, well, their mills are everywhere, but they're running that much bigger than what we were able to do here in America.
And but they did it the old-fashioned way, folks,
right.
The real way. Hey, this is fascinating. I hope you're as fascinated as I am. We're going to be back to these gentlemen in just a moment. But right now, the Greenville Textile Heritage Chorale singing Grace. Come on, folks. Come on.
Torre
We're talking over here. Excuse me, I didn't mean to not pay attention to you, Monica. But you know, when I'm with greatness like this, I'm just naturally going to segue over and listen to. We've been talking to the folks today, Don Harkins and Bill Cashion and Marshall Williams. We've been talking with them about the Textile Heritage Society, and I'm learning. I'm getting educated tonight. So many of you who said so-and-so impacted my life. You've been calling in. All right, now we've got a lot of prayer requests. Yes, we'll be praying for you in just a moment. But we want you, if you grew up in one of these mill villages, go to the telephone, would you please? And tell our prayer partner, I'm calling tonight because I want to share with these gentlemen about someone who impacted my life. Would you do that? Please, we would appreciate it. We were looking at a lot of the people over there, and if, by the way, if you happen to see somebody in your family there, let us know, okay? Let us know. Now, we're going over, there's 3 other pictures over there we didn't see, Don, and I'm going to let you start first with this picture that we're looking at right now.
This is a drawing of our proposed Millhouse Museum. It'll be on the premises of our Textile Heritage Park, and we're excited about it, and it's going to be built on the same scale as a mill house.
Okay.
And inside we'll have a place for a lot of our pictures and our memorabilia, and on the back end of it will be a stage where we can have outdoor concerts. So it's a Mill House Museum, and it'll be right up front of the park there, right off Smythe Street. And that's the next phase of our park. We've just about finished the first 3 phases of the park, and this is the 4th phase. So we're excited.
And that house will house from all the mills?
Yes, we'll have probably have to swap out some of the exhibits from month to month or whatever, but we'll have, and we've got tons of pictures and memorabilia that we've collected over these 13 years, and it's just amazing.
And
what
people
we
can
do.
come in any time. It will be open.
There'll be certain hours, I'm
Okay.
sure. We haven't
Right.
gotten that far into
Right.
the plans for
Right.
that, but we're excited about it. And this is something that we've dreamed about for a number of years, of having a museum. There's no museum in this area
Yeah.
that houses the Mill Village relics and memorabilia.
And when you think about how blessed we are in this area to have such a heritage, we need something.
We
like
do.
this. I mean,
we do. It's long overdue.
Absolutely. I mean, it is. All right. This next picture. There are 2 paintings. Is that right? You, Marshall, Bill, Don Marshall. Tell us what we're seeing there.
Judy Aiken Young, who lives in Easley, has become kind of our textile artist, and she's got a whole booklets of pictures that she's drawn concerning the Mill Village, and it kind of reflecting the Mill Village life. And here you can see the house, you can see the children on the street going to church, or the schools, the mill. It's kind of an interpretive paintings of what she sees in real pictures. In her mind, she puts it on canvas,
Right.
and they're for sale, and they're all different sizes. She does different types of paintings and drawings that she has, but she'll be having a display there as well.
Could people purchase?
They can purchase
okay.
from her.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Sure
Okay.
can.
And what about this next painting there we've got? I see beautiful trees. What are we looking at there? What is this?
That's probably from her lifestyle. She lived in Easley, so that's probably a reflection of one of the mills
That
over
is,
there in
that's
Easley.
her Easley Mill,
The Easley Mill
where
there,
she
and
grew
the
up.
school.
She actually grew up on the Mill Village.
Okay. All
But
right.
she did go to several of the villages. For example,
Right.
she told me, and I had no idea, she went to call it Mellon Street at Slater, or First Street's what we call it, and she said, I just saw a house I liked, and she painted that. And she did that on several of the mill villages. So many of the mill villages have pictures like that.
Were all the houses similar or the same, or was there something that was pronounced, a different pronouncement somewhere in each one? I mean, or when you drive by them today, they look similar.
In our village, most of them were the same, but on Smythe Street is where the bosses live, so those were a little bit larger homes. But you could go down several streets, and all of them were built the same.
Woodside.
And it's a little different from different mill villages. Also.
They called them types, like a type A house, type B, type C. And as they began to sell the mill houses, the houses in price varied from the different type. It might be a 3-room house, 4-room house, 6-room house. But Woodside probably in the state of South Carolina had the most different kinds of houses, the different types, A, B, C, D. There's probably 7 or 8, 9. Well, I think there's 9 different types of houses. In other words, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, 6 rooms, upstairs. For example, in the earlier mills, they had two-story homes. But in the beginning, as the later mills were being built, most of them were just one-level houses.
Right.
But the mills companies, the owners sold to these large corporations, and at Monaghan, I think it was in the 40s. Before that, the individuals had rented the houses from the mill companies, but they sold them, and then for instance, Monaghan, J.P. Stevens sold the homes.
Right.
And I think we had a 4-room home, and I think it was sold to us for about $3,000 or $4,000
Yeah, most of them were around
in the 40s.
Right.
Oh,
in
my.
that range.
My goodness, my good. And could you imagine what they're going for today? I mean, you know.
275,000.
Unbelievable,
In
isn't
the
it?
Dunedin community, that's unbelievable because it's accessibility to the Greenville hospital system right there.
Right.
6-room house with 2 baths in Dunedin right now are selling anywhere from $285 to $325.
I mean, and would they even thought of that,
No.
50, 80 years ago? I mean, my gracious, and all of that with learning all that we've learned tonight. Some of you've been listening. Go ahead and call us. You know that maybe even an aunt or uncle, maybe a great grandparent. I don't know, worked in the mill. Maybe it was dad or granddad that really impacted your life. That would be fine. Give us a call. We'd like to know that. Because what we're going to do, what Don's going to do, these gentlemen are going to do, they're going to put it in their book of remembrance. And Don, did you say that people that come this Saturday, August 24th, beginning at 10 a.m., going until 2 p.m., at the Heritage Annual Textile Heritage Day, you will be placing these, and people will have opportunity to
we'll
come.
have a form from them to fill out the same information.
Okay, and this
For
will be,
someone in their life or a family that impacted them.
will this be compiled, or will it just be aggregate and placed in a book of remembrance?
We're gonna put it in we've got someone that's gonna take it and put it in a book.
Isn't that great?
Right.
And some of you out there, and you ought to call us. You really should. And okay, so it was Dad. What a great epithet to say and to pin on Dad, to say he impacted me. Oh, that's great. He worked in the mill. One thing we know, people that grew up, worked in the mill, knew what hard work was.
Amen.
Sure did.
You know?
Yes.
That in the grocery business, people knew what hard work was. And we know. Many of you called in tonight. We want to thank you. You've called in with prayer requests. So many of you called in tonight. Some of you are asking for peace in your family. People are asking us to pray. And remember, you've got some knee problems. You've got swelling in your knees. Someone is calling in. Someone got a good report last night. You've been praying for healing. We've got folks who are asking us to pray for these students as they've gone back to school. And many of you have called in tonight, and we want you to continue doing that, please. We have someone who's called in not just for healing, but for salvation as well. And so what I'm going to do tonight, we're getting ready to go to the hard break, but before we do, we're going to pray collectively for you. And so I'm going to offer this prayer, gentlemen, and we're in agreement or praying that God's will be done. Amen. Would you join with me as we pray? Now, loving Father, as we come before you, you know every name of every person. You made them inside and out, outside and in. You know what they're going through. May thy will be done. May they know that we've prayed for them collectively. They'll be prayed for their individually. Touch their lives. Yes. We pray for healing. We pray for restitution. Lord, whatever the great need is, thy will be done is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Now don't go anywhere, please, unless you need to get a drink. I'll be right here. I'll be looking for you on the other side of 9 o'clock, okay? Yeah, I'm talking to you again, yes. So please, we want to thank you for being part. Don't go anywhere. This is fascinating. You're going to learn a great lesson. I'm learning. Watch out. Watch out. We'll be right back. See you in just a moment.